Okay, there we go. We are ready.
Okay, I would like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs Development Authority to order for Tuesday, May 8th, 2025. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Morning, everybody. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Chip Collins.
Present.
Andy Bauman.
Here.
Tasha Battle. Hardy Dorsey.
Here.
Joe Hausman.
Here, non-medical.
Sunny Park, absent. Ed O'Connor.
Yeah.
We have a quorum.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
So approved. Dorsey.
Okay, there was a motion by Mr. Dorsey, seconded by Ms. Battle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting agenda passes, approved. We've been been given minutes from our January 9th meeting. Is there a motion to approve meeting minutes?
So approved also. Dorsey.
Second. Motion to approve the meeting minutes is made by Mr. Dorsey, seconded by Ms. Battle. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Moving on to new business, but before we do so, on my script, it didn't say hello and good morning, so I appreciate the script.
Next time
I'm still kind of waking up here. But hello, everybody. It's been a few months since we've been together. Ed and Joe, welcome wherever you guys are. Glad to have you remotely. We've actually got some business to attend to today. I give all credit to that to Mr. Burnett, our new leader. So whether it's coincidence or I don't think so. I don't think there's any such thing as coincidence. So anyway, we've got something important to discuss, and that's our new business. And with that, Chris, I guess I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as everything that gets done here in the city is always a team effort between mayor, city council, staff, and I'm fortunate along with Madison to be part of a fantastic team here. And this is a big win for us, no doubt about it. We want to talk about a new project that is really in the shadow of City Springs. This is on the southwest corner of the intersection of Mount Vernon and Sandy Springs Circle. Rocky, if we want to go to the first slide, we'll show you an artist rendering of the project. And in fact, the press releases are out now. They began coming out from Trammell Crow yesterday. I've seen 2 articles this morning about it as well. So mixed use development. It's developed by Trammell Crow Residential in partnership with Third and Urban, which is an Atlanta-based company that will do the retail piece. Many of you may know this as the Hidson Center site. It's been owned by Sandy Springs Methodist Church for decades. There's a gymnasium there, Sunday school, classrooms. Going back decades ago, this was I think maybe the original location of the West Lynn School when it was first founded before it built its campus out in that county. It's an 8.1 acre site. This is a mixed-use development with a combination principally of residential, both traditional stack flat, multifamily. There'll also be 30 luxury townhomes as part of this. There's 18,000.
And those are rentals.
Those are rentals, yeah. This is an all rental community, not a for sale component of this development. There is what we call a jewel box restaurant building. You will see it right there.
Chris, can you orient us?
Yeah.
The streets we're looking at. Yeah.
So we're looking at Sandy Springs Circle going southbound towards Hammond.
All right, the street at the bottom is Sandy Springs Circle.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's not visible, but to your right would be the intersection of Mount Vernon.
Got it.
So
And that's a new street going through?
that is
Is that relatively the entrance to the parking lot?
That's relatively the entrance currently to the parking lot. It will become a cut through or pass through road through the development that will tee up or be directly in front of where Hildebrand comes into Sandy Springs Circle. It'll go through the site and then will come out on Mount Vernon where the current driveway for the church comes out. Sort of on the, I guess that would be the far western tip of the site. There's a water tower there right now, City of Atlanta water tower, which will stay.
And walk us through what we're looking at. Where's, I think I know where the jewel box is, but just sort of, and maybe you were going to do this anyway, but.
Anyway, I'll point it out using the pen route. So again, to orient you, this is Mount Vernon intersection here. So this would be coming down the hill. These are the southbound lanes currently of Sandy Springs Circle. Again, this roughly lines up with the current entrance into the property. The Hitson Center would sit here on a hill right now. So this will be mass graded down to street grade here. The entrance will come in, it will go all the way through. I'm not sure if you can see, but it actually goes and it turns and it comes out on Mount Vernon back here on the other side of the development. This is along Mount Vernon. This will be directly across the street from the church's sanctuary and facilities. This is multifamily here. Restaurant site right here on the corner. You'll see the patio. It'll have outdoor seating with umbrellas. There'll be a second restaurant site here. We call this a jewel box. Don't know if they'll do a rooftop patio on this one or not. There'll be an additional either restaurant, coffee shop here with outdoor seating. You'll see there's a fountain here. They've got it actually with the Sandy Springs logo. You probably can't see that, but and then this is additional multifamily. The garage is wrapped around this building. So you won't see the garage, the parking garage, because it'll be buffeted on three sides by the apartments. The townhomes are not in view. They're on the back side of this building. So to enter the townhomes, you would come in here, go just past the apartments, turn to the left, and there'll be 30 townhome units. And I believe it is 6 buildings of 5 units, I think is how they've got it drawn. So it's 362 total multifamily units, 30 townhomes, and 18,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space. What we're going to be talking about today is an abatement for a portion of the parking that will be for city use. So any other questions on the outlet?
That multifamily housing, is there a mixture of people who have lots of means and people who are having difficulty with regards to paying their bills?
So this is what we would call a market rate deal.
All market rate?
It's all market rate. And given where construction cost is today, it's pretty high right now, and interest rates. These are probably going to be in the rental rate of in the range of $3 a square foot. So that would not be considered affordable housing.
And it's also all stick built though, right?
It is all stick built. Yeah, it'll be podium. It'll be stick built over two stories of concrete podium. And the general contractor on this will be New South Construction. CBRE is the leasing agent. Gary's the architect. And Trammell Crow Residential and Third Urban. The 2 developers, Trammell Residential, Third, and Urban Retail. That's a good team. Team that I've had experience with my days in the private sector, and these guys are excellent at delivering high quality projects. So what we're looking at today, the city's role in this, there was no zoning required on this. The project was the property, the land owned by the church, was already zoned to accommodate a project like this. So no zoning was required by Planning Commission or City Council. Really been no variance request made.
We've had no say in any of this.
That is correct.
I mean, this is their deal.
Yeah, it's really been, the negotiations have been between the church and the church has been trying to sell this land since 2016. I remember meeting with the church when I was on council in 2016, when they were beginning to have discussions with their congregation about taking this land asset and monetizing it. The churches were already experiencing downward trends in membership and tithes and offerings that was exacerbated by COVID. And so churches that have great real estate assets like this are now converting those into cash. They'll go into endowment funds to help sustain their church operations or be used to build new facilities or renovate facilities. So Sandy Springs Methodist is really blessed to have this fantastic piece of land right in the heart of downtown Sandy Springs. They went through an RFP process, and Trammell Crow and Third North winning bidders in the RFP process. So this has been pretty heavily vetted through the church. You'll notice in the press release, it actually says a partnership between Sandy Springs Methodist Church and Trammell Crow Residential and Third North. So they're really looking at it as a huge catalyst for the future of the church's ability to sustain operations.
And privately financed, right? I mean, the equity and the debt, other than this piece, is all private. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah. It's all traditionally financed. Typically in this market right now, it's probably a 60-40 split, probably 60% senior debt provided by a bank, 40% provided by an equity partner. And that's so with the challenges still in the financial markets, one of the reasons we've seen development slow to get going is because we still have challenges in the financial markets. To be able to secure the debt and capital required to do a project like this, I think speaks extremely well to quality of development, quality of developers, and their capacity to raise debt and equity in still what is a tight financial market.
Chris, maybe, and I think everybody should hear the answer. You know, this body is able to use the tax abatement bill to encourage and induce development that might not otherwise occur. So somebody might ask, well, this is one of the most prime pieces of real estate in Sandy Springs. Why do we need to give them any breaks to encourage development of the site?
So the real answer is because of the parking that the city is getting for this transaction. Currently, there's 105 surface parking spaces that are part of the Hitson Center. And that's available for city use during events. For example, concerts down at Heritage Green on Sunday, concerts here on Friday night, Six Springs Green. I believe the staff and cast of the theater uses that because most of our spaces here, when we've got a sold out night
For Six Springs Theater Company.
Yeah.
That's what you're referring to.
Yes, for City Springs Theater Company, we've got a sold out show. The deck here is full.
That's gonna be like 50 or 60 nights a year at least.
Correct. At least 50 or 60 nights a year, plus the other events that occur. But those spaces are going away. Obviously, when Trammell Crow closes on the land acquisition and begins developing their project, those 105 spaces will be gone. And so Andy and I were actually in a luncheon with them a number of months ago. And he raised the topic of, well, with our surface spaces going away because of the redevelopment of the site, would it be possible for us to consider city spaces in your garage? It would require an expansion of the garage because I think they had about 440 spaces penciled in originally for the development. They thought through it, came back and says, yes, we can add city parking. And so once they had an affirmative that they could add city parking, expand their deck and make parking available for our use, then we got into how do we structure it, how do we fund it. And the tax abatement is specific only to the 111 spaces that would be city spaces, which is why we're abating it to create an asset for the citizens of Sandy Springs to use for parking for events here at City Springs.
I'd like to kind of add a little bit to your question. So Chris and I did meet with the development team. I had set up this meeting with two things in mind. One was the parking. The city has been seeing parking for our piece at extraordinarily high numbers on very, very tight parcels. And we have a very difficult time. We need more parking for our events. And then when we develop this additional space, these phases that we have here, where we're under parked, every study has shown we're under parked. So we were losing the parking. But the numbers we were seeing were $40,000 to $50,000 a space, and they're already building a deck on a much bigger property. So there's some economies of scale. They're building and way more spaces than we were gonna build. So just for obvious reasons, the price per space compared to what we would have to pay and will have to pay is lower. But the point of the meeting was, and I want to, because you asked the question about affordable units. I had approached these guys with a couple of things in mind. One of the things that has concerned all of us, the council, the mayor, and the city as a matter of policy is that we, two things. One is having incentives for more affordable components of these projects. And two was having for sale housing. And we had all hoped that those townhomes would be for sale product, which they are not. And also, they are not building all of the density. I don't believe, Chris, is this true? They're not getting every last unit of density out of this that they could if they wanted more density. This is just the project they want to build. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we did also have conversation about, would you consider, I had nothing to promise and Chris had nothing to promise, but just to float it, would you consider more density and include some potentially affordable housing? They may have actually had to come to us for some things for height, potentially. So we had some of those early discussions, but this project was pretty far down the road by that point. I mean, I want to be very clear. This project was happening. It's a private project. They didn't, as Chris said, they weren't coming to the city for anything, nothing. So this was just simply a really good way for us to replace the parking, because we knew we were going to lose that. So those were the two pieces. And then, that was the genesis of the idea. And then Chris and Dan and the team had to wrap their hands around how we would get to this point. And they've done a great job coming up with the pilot program to do this. But we did talk to them about that, and that's still a need in our city for sure. But the good news is our piece of this is the parking, and that's what we're going to have a chance to address is replacement parking at a lot less cost. And frankly, using the tool of the development authority means that economically, the city ends up getting a great deal on this because our piece of the overall taxes, and there were no taxes on this property. This has been a non-tax producing property. It's the church property. So the tax base is growing, which is great. But the Sandy Springs piece by and large is around 15%. So this payment in lieu, which they can explain later, really is only Sandy Springs is effectively, when you come down to it, there's more to this with the infrastructure, is getting parking at 15 cents on the dollar. I mean, that's the headline, is we're getting this great additional parking at 15 cents on the dollar.
And this deck will be close enough to where we are right now.
And that's what we had to
for it
decide.
Makes sense. People will actually use it.
Yeah, so that was, there was not initial, I don't think there was initial universal agreement to do this. There was a staff, in fact, I think there was some resistance, but I think they used their collective minds, the policymakers got together. It for sure is close enough it's already being used, Chair. And that was one of the points.
Right.
And it's for sure close enough to the heritage. And at some point we want to develop these other parcels over here. It's directly across the street.
Yeah, Hildebrand and
The Sandy Springs Circle Corner. This is just that many fewer spaces we're gonna have to make up for long-term. So the city, whatever number we need, you can reduce 110 from that calculation that we were gonna build 100 cents on the dollar for like 40,000 a space.
And are these spaces that would serve the retail that's going in this site?
They already had the space. I'm gonna let Chris address that. Okay, that's what Chris addressed.
So these spaces are in addition to the 400 plus spaces that were going to be built to serve the residential. So they're adding 111 extra spaces for the city. The city will have, during any city event, we will have exclusive rights to those spaces. And we can go through, we've got some talking points on the letter of intent drafted along Trammell Road. Rocky, you want to go to that next slide? We'll go through the terms of the deal. It will be a tri-party agreement with the property owner, in this case, Trammell Crow's subsidiary entity, which will own and develop the property. The Development Authority and the city, the PFA. And in essence, our letter of intent is non-binding. We've drafted it. Jim's, I think, seen the draft of that, as has Trammell Crow and their attorneys. So we're in draft form right now. If it is approved today by Development Authority, we'll take it to the City Council on June 17th. Their ratification and execute at that point. Letter of intent, letter of interest, begin working towards crafting the documents for Jim and Austin and Bird as their attorneys work. And Jim's going to talk a bit about the program overall and some of the specific documents. But it's 111 parking spaces would be designated for city use. We'll have a parking easement agreement. The approximate terms of our agreement would include first 2 hours free for our spaces, the 111. That mirrors what we do here at City Springs in our garage. We would be having flexibility, for example, if we wanted to designate parking costs outside of the 2 hours free. That would be up to the city and to 12 Oaks, who's our parking center facility manager. All of the revenue earned from parking fees on our 111 spaces would be the revenue to the city that would come back to the city. We would be, as a partner, it's probably not the right word, but as a partner in the parking garage, we would have obligations to fund on a prorated basis any expenses related to the parking garage, such as ongoing maintenance, capital expenditures that might be related to maintaining the parking garage. That would be no different than if we owned the garage ourselves. If we own the garage ourselves, we would have 100% of the cost associated with maintaining it. Under this scenario, we'll have a prorated that be roughly 18%, 16 to 18% of the total expenses would come back to the city, because that's the number of total spaces, that's the percentage we would have. Third-party management company, which we currently use already here at City Springs, would also manage the 111 spaces for us. Trammell Crow is going to also use a third-party management company. They are going to interview our company, 12 Oaks, as one of the possible firms that they might use. So it's very possible we could end up using the same company. All right, next slide. The LOI would continue by saying it's a 50-year agreement. And through the course of the 50
Runs with the land. So if they sell it, we still have our.
That's correct. Runs with the land. So even if they do sell the project, our 50-year agreement continues. They do have a buyout option. They could buy us out of these spaces by paying the city 200% of our hard cost of construction, which is $3,312,000. If they paid us $6,624,000, they would be able to buy us out of those spaces. That would not be a bad return. Also, we would get all of the parking revenue from our spaces throughout the term of the agreement until they bought us out. They would have the ability to make up the difference to get us again to the 6,624, 6,624,000, however they chose to do that. But it would give us a way to recuperate our investment and to make profit on our investment. Because we would have to take that money and go build more parking somewhere else.
Does that come to the Development Authority or to the Public Facilities Authority or the city?
I believe it's the PFA, because I think it'll be.
So kind of two steps here, on my side, the tax incentive, I'll go through that first, and that's what we're voting on today.
Okay.
But there'll be a second agreement between the city, the Development Authority and Trammell Crow entity. And that's, payments back over a term of years. And I'll be a second meeting for you guys. Once that's finalized, mainly the parking easement agreement, everything else will be finalized the next few weeks.
Question.
Yes.
The parking that is currently used, is that mostly used for city events? Like, is it used staff or is it used during any other day, I guess, where people here?
So I would say on a normal workday, there's little usage of it. We have plenty of parking in our deck to handle all the employees that work for the city in this building. And most of the retail trade. Where we really have a shortage is going to be on a Friday or Saturday night. We've got heavy coverage in our restaurants, especially if we have a sold out show in the theater. Like we were here for a beautiful show, it's right at sellout capacity. And we got one of the last spaces in the deck. And the cast of Beautiful was parking over this space. Because again, there's 105 spaces.
Yeah, the cast crew, and it's big. Are volunteers parking over there too?
Yes,
So we have big volunteer crew. Yeah.
correct.
So my question is, when there is not a large event like that show, are the spaces, can the spaces be, or are the spaces used for this development as well?
They can be.
Overflow, their restaurant overflow, or,
Correct.
you know, residential, I don't know.
Yeah, if we had nothing going on in the city that was going to warrant use of the 111 spaces, they could use them for overflow if they had an event. But of course, they, under their permitting requirements, they've got to have adequate spaces to park their residents.
They weren't going to build these spaces. This was not spaces that they were planning to build. It was only at the suggestion of the city that we add to the spaces that they were planning to build.
And we can't stop them from parking. If they want to pay, you know, if somebody's over there has guests in for the weekend and they want to pay to park, we'll take their money.
We'll take their money. That's right.
And the same with the restaurants. Chris, just thinking of the practical standpoint of, you know, is all this workable? Do we have a similar arrangement with our deck right now? I mean, I know we kind of share, the apartments have, you know, sealed off spaces. Is that a similar sort of sharing arrangement? Revenue and all that?
So you were correct. The apartments do have their dedicated spaces, with actually gates in and out of their section of the garage. And Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they do pay us for those spaces.
I don't actually know the answer to
I
that.
I think they do. Dan, you might know.
Yeah, but they don't pay for the spaces per se, but we have a covenant with them, just like we would with any joint property owner, where we share the maintenance of the common maintenance of the different areas that are common entryway, lighting, that sort of thing. And it's kind of the reverse of what we're proposing here with the church.
Okay.
The same sort of rule that we're designated parking places, but there'll be some common maintenance issues too.
Okay.
You know, one interesting thing that I would remind you is that, you know, this discussion, we're acting as a property owner, but when the deal is over with, we'll be back being a city. So just like the vice chair is doing in city council, we're discussing parking policies within this district now. We have booting issues, and that sort of thing that the mayor and council will continuously be working on.
Okay. And we haven't had any issues with the share arrangement with this deck, I suppose, right?
Amazingly, no.
Okay, all right. Great.
All right, there's one more slide, Rocky, for the letter of intent. So under the development agreement, Trammell Pro would be able to receive a 3.5% general contractor's development fee on the cost of the garage, our 111 spaces, which is a very low GC rate relative to what the typical general contractor would charge. In no event shall our cost exceed $4,877,333. And we'll review where that cost is going to be spent in just a moment. But it's hard cost to pay for the construction of our 111 spaces. It's also cost associated with infrastructure improvement. We'll talk about that just in a moment. And it'll be soft costs related to this specific transaction. Rocky, let's go to the next slide. I know this is difficult to see. Rocky, can you blow that up at all?
See,
I don't know if I can.
Okay. Well, so this is an estimate of what the tax effect, as Councilman Bellman said, this property is currently not on the tax digest. Since it's owned by the church and nonprofit organization, it's currently exempt from property taxes. So by virtue of this development, it will go on to the tax rolls in Fulton County and the city of Sandy Springs. And so trying to estimate what we think the property taxes would be based on, in fact, we used the data from Ashton Springs, the apartments here at City Springs, and put some value increase because there's definitely been increases in the cost of apartment units and since Ashton Springs was built, based on obviously construction cost increases. So using a 10% markup over and above the tax value of Ashton Springs, that would make the units worth roughly $318,000 a unit. Now, although we see 412, that's not accurate. It's fewer than that. It's about 393 actual residential units, but we also assumed a rate for the retail. So looked at the number of units times 318, you come to a taxable value of about $131,000. And using 40%, using 40% of that number, you get to an assessed value of $52.4 million. The current millage rate across Fulton County, Board of Education, City of Sandy Springs is 3.09%, which would result in first year taxes projected at $1.6 million, 1,620. If we assume a 3% annualized growth rate in taxes, you can see that starting in year one, the taxes would be about $1,620,000, and they grow each year by 3%. So by the time you get to year 10, it's $2,114,000 in an estimated property taxes on an annualized basis. Under the abatement plan, you'll recall that Fulton County, the typical structure is in the first year, it's 50% reduction, and then that reduction decreases by 5% a year. So in year two, it goes to a 45% reduction, 40% year three, et cetera, until the property is fully returned to the tax rolls at the end of the 10th. Over the duration of the 10-year term of the proposed abatement, the estimated abated taxes are $4,882,883 approximately. If we applied a net present value discounting to the 4.8 million, it would be about 3.6 million in today's dollars. But then the question is, how are we going to spend those dollars that would be coming back to the city over the course of the 10-year period? Because Trammell Crow is going to, in essence, reimburse the city or pay to the city up to the dollar amount. It actually ends up being $4,877,333. And we're going to use that money to pay for the 111 spaces. The cost we've gotten from their contractors, $3,312,303. That's slightly under $30,000 per space. Had we gone out and built this ourselves and we got some bids across the street, that would have been somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 per space. So by virtue of these spaces going into an existing structure, we're definitely able to lower the cost versus what we had to pay if we built a new deck that the city funded itself. I mentioned the 3.5% developer fee that does go to Trammell Crow. That equals $115,931 they will be earning for doing these spaces for the city. The Development Authority 3 is a fee, it's $163,784. Our other infrastructure, those are going to be costs that the city spends for road work, safety measures in particular. We talked about one of the big keys is getting pedestrians safely across Mount Vernon and Sandy Springs Circle. It might include called Hawk Crossing, which is a lighted crossing. It could include street front parking on the west side of Sandy Springs Circle, landscaping or sidewalks. We're still working through how the $900,000 will be spent, but that will go into infrastructure around this development and around the City Springs.
Ask and clarify. None of that, it's all at the city's discretion, correct?
Correct.
And none of that was required of them for this project. We are not substituting, they would not, under our development codes, none of this infrastructure work that was ever going to be on their side of the ledger to do. This is all our discretionary work. We were not able to impose, Kristen, you're nodding yes.
Yes.
We were not able to impose this work. So we're leveraging, we're taking advantage of this deal and this structure that we're now doing to basically fund discretionary infrastructure improvements up to close to $1 million, because of the fact that we're sort of adding it on to this particular deal. So we're able to do that as well, basically at 15 cents on the dollar again. Is that right?
Yes, anything that they're required to do, they will conduct a traffic study as part of their lane disturbance permit. And anything that they are required to do from an infrastructure perspective will be included in that
On their side.
On their side,
At 100% their cost
at their own cost. So this would be above and beyond anything that's required.
that we want.
Correct.
And if I could, to back up what he's saying, is that when the city's involved, the development authority is involved in a deal like this, we have to be very careful that we don't hand over legislative power to the deal maker. So when this is done, Kristen's shop will still be riding herd, if you will, over the permitting process. And included in this development is at least one street that will be added to the city's inventory. So there are a lot.
They'll have to dedicate that. That's not going to be a private street.
It will be a private
It's
street.
private now.
Yeah.
They started the discussion.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I always thought it was private.
It started out.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Two of them, but those sorts of things will be controlled by the permitting office.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, and I think we've been talking for a while about what we could do in downtown to make it safer, more walkable, more bikeable, more beautification initiatives. You know, as people come into the city, we want them to realize they're coming into City Springs, and something that's very, very special about it gives us the kind of look that we want as a community. These dollars will help to fund all of those initiatives. Especially the safety component, is we want to get people safely across from those spaces over to Heritage or up here to City Springs. Additional costs would be for legal expenses of the transaction. We do have a 5% contingency built in case, and that would be prorated, and would be in case there's rock that we don't know about that's discovered, in case there's soil problems as part of the garage construction. We've estimated 5% contingency. If we don't use all of that 5% contingency, it would go back into construction. And then finally, there's a small difference between the 4733 or 4733 number between 4882. It's about $5,500, and so that difference would be retained by Trammell Crow. In essence, that and anything above our numbers, if there is savings over and above the 4.7 million, $4.8 million, that would go back to Trammell Crow. But savings would only occur if the tax value and the taxes are higher than our estimates have proven out. But in essence, we'll get all of our construction costs back for the garage and for the cost of the transaction and for the infrastructure, the $900,000 in infrastructure improvements we want to do to our streets and sidewalks. And finally, we'll look at one more slide and turn it over to Jim. And again, up at the top, this sort of reiterates the structure over the 10-year term, getting back to again, 4,877,333. You'll see there's a breakout on legal costs there between our attorneys, Woodward Lee, $120,000. Austin Bird is Trammell's attorneys at $97,500. Synovus is acting as a fiduciary agent for the financial piece of this transaction, only charging $1,900, and there's $300 in estimated cost. You'll see Austin and Bird's fees are broken out below there at $97,500. Also to the right, you'll see the timeline of this. We're holding the Development Authority meeting today. I mentioned this will go to council on June 17th if it's ratified here today. And we will be looking at document execution and closing hopefully sometime in mid to late June. And then finally, it just lays out the millage rate. You can see that currently Sandy Springs is only getting 0.47% of the 3.09. But with this abatement, you know, those taxes will come back to us for the next 10 years to pay for this infrastructure investment. And with that, I know we've kind of gone along. There's no other questions. Jim?
Sure, yeah.
Let me, like as a lawyer, I get to be on the client side this time. Are those attorney's fees flat fees or an estimate of hourly fees?
Flat fees contingent upon closing. Yep.
Great. All right,
Okay.
Jim.
Well, good.
take it
Yeah.
away.
So I think Chip and I are the only ones been here since the very beginning.
Yep.
When we created the authority, how many years ago? Maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think I wasn't here from the very beginning, but maybe a year after it was created.
Yeah, so this is a program we've done before with the Development Authority. I think the last one might have been for this Carter's building, right over here in connection when we financed this Form Center in the City Hall. As a kind of a P3 public-private partnership arrangement with Carter's, went through a bidding process. They agreed to do the commercial side and the residential city finances portion. But we don't use this structure before, P3 arrangements. The first one this Development Authority did was the Gateway Project, which is at Roswell and Windsor Parkway. That was the where Trader Joe's is now. But we did a tax incentive. I'll go through what that is for those 3 projects for those projects, and that's the first one Development Authority did. I think that was in 14 maybe. And so what we did there is that they came to the city and they needed a realignment of Windsor Parkway. And so it incurred some costs to the city. So we did the tax incentive, but they agreed to reimburse the city for the governmental portion of the project to make it work out. And we've done that for other deals, Mill Creek, we did it for them. We built a road in connection with that, a few other projects. But it's been a couple of years. I think the last one was maybe 5 years ago. We did one of these, but we've done before with the Development Authority and other development authorities in the area, Fulton County Development Authority being one. And Alpharetta Development Authority, and a few others, Roswell's use this program. And what it is in Fulton County is, as Chris mentioned, it's a 10-year tax incentive. All companies receive the same tax incentive, whether it's Mercedes-Benz headquarters, which Fulton County did, or anything in the city of Atlanta or Fulton County. What happens during construction, they'll pay the tax bill of what they would have paid. And so whatever the existing value is now, not the zero value, but whatever it would be, they'll continue to pay that during construction. I think construction goes through 27 possibly, but then whenever they get their final CO, that's the first year after that CO, certificate of occupancy is your first year of your 10-year tax incentive. And the first year, they reduce taxes by 50%. And so that's your incentive. Every year, according to that schedule, you pay 5% more, this being the company. And so year 2, they'll pay 55% of taxes of the tax bill that they would have paid if they owned it. Year 3, 40, 60%. And by the end, they'll be paying 95% in the last year.
But can you explain what they do with the money that they're saving?
Yep. And so that'll be, so that's part of it. So that's their savings. That's on the project. That's on the commercial and the residential. But kind of like what we did for all the rest of the transactions, for the governmental investment part, they're going to reimburse us for that. And there'll be a separate agreement. We call it memorandum of agreement. That'll be between the city, this Development Authority, and the Trammell Crow entity. They'll agree to reimburse us for that amount. And so that's the amount coming back to the city to cover the costs of the parking and streetscapes and things like that, are kind of for this project, but also their project.
So the tax saving that they realize
Will come back.
is then paid in a like amount.
Yeah.
In lieu of taxes to the
Right.
city, is that
Right,
right?
a contract payment. The company will agree to pay a contract payment back to the city for that amount. And so that's the structure. Yeah, but the original one is just, providing a tax incentive for the project. Then separately, they'll agree to contractually, as part of the parking agreement and everything else that's being negotiated, to pay us money back over time for the reimbursements for those costs for our parking and everything else. But this tax incentive, it's a typical structure that we use, when we do deals in Fulton County. We use, in the area. It's a typical structure we use for this Development Authority as well. What happens is the project is transferred to the Development Authority. Development Authority will own this project for the duration of tax incentive. So through 2038, lease it back to the company. We're not a true landlord. We're not going to fix the roof or mow the grass. They'll handle all that. But they'll have obligations to do certain things, including identify authority members, provide insurance, things like that to make sure we're covered. In connection with tax incentive deals, there's this tax incentive bond, which is a legal structure that Georgia is required for these deals, where the Development Authority issues this bond. It doesn't finance the project, it finances the acquisition of the project, but the company will finance the project themselves. And all these other legal documents that are required for tax incentives under Georgia. And so any of these documents. There's no obligations of the development authority or the city. The city is not paying for a dime of this, of their project, the private portion. We're not obligated to do anything financially to pay. It's a limited obligation on our part, and it's purely everything regarding the cost of their project is on them, and they'll go out and find their own financing, whether it's lenders or their own lenders or their own equity investors. And that's on them to build their project. This is just the legal structure in order to make this work. So what we'll need today is to approve it's called a bond resolution, which really approves all the tax incentive documents. From here, we will go to the Board of Tax Assessors and get their tax agreement approved, which basically has them agreed to setting leasehold interest or the tax incentive schedule at this 50%, 45% schedule, have their approval. There's a validation process in Superior Court, which we'll go through. This is a legal requirement of Georgia law, present everything to local Superior Court. And then once all those steps are done, which takes about 7 weeks, we'll be positioned to close. And then so this is authorizes really us to move forward with the transaction, go through all the requirements to from this point, to have it authorized by various government entities besides the Development Authority, and then authorizes Chip or the vice chair to sign the documents when we get to close. And so that's the action we'll take at this meeting. Don't want to move forward. Again, we're still negotiating the parking agreement, the easement agreement, and that agreement where they agree to reimburse the city. And so we'll come back at that point once that's finalized. And we got a good draft of it in place, and have another authority meeting between now and closing to approve that. So you'll see that one. That'll be a separate approval once we have all that finalized. And that'll bring in some more information about the parking easement agreement and certain other things that are still being negotiated. So that'll be a second action. That'll just relate to that payment that's coming back to the city and through the public authority.
Okay. Let me make a couple comments, ask a couple questions, and I'm going to get more up for anybody else. But as I'm understanding this, just boiled down as much as we can make it. This is a mechanism that's allowing the city to incorporate needed parking in this project for much cheaper than we would be able to build it somewhere else around here. Is that at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here? That's correct. Okay. All right, and it's parking, we're gonna have to, city's gonna have to have one way or another. And this just gives us a kind of a win-win. Okay, I understand that. And then second, so exactly what do you need in form of a motion? What do you need approval?
It could be a motion to approve the bond resolution as presented. As simple as that.
Jim, do you want to go over any documents or do anything up on your slide? Or do you feel?
I think we're fine here.
I mean, so this is not just, we want to go to a letter of intent and explore, then we'll come back to a final approval. This is going to be an approval that allows us, chair or vice chair, to sign whatever, to do the deal.
For the tax incentive.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And of course, it doesn't require us to close, so anything happens or whatever, this gives us initial authorization to move forward. Okay. Everything else, obviously subject to.
All right. Well, I'd like to open the floor to questions, starting with Ms. Battle.
You just mentioned, and I think he was talking, so
Oh, sure.
you said bond resolution, taxes, and
You
just said
what did I say? The tax incentives bond resolution as presented is the motion. But basically this allows us to move forward, and also everything just regarding the tax incentive portion, which is reduction of property taxes, this authorizes that transaction to occur. It's not required, of course, it authorizes the chairman to sign. So whatever reason, you don't have to close. The chairman has the discretion.
All right, and if we decided this is not something we wanted to approve, what happens? Does this deal, does their project still go forward, but without the extra parking spaces?
It does. Their project is not contingent upon us.
But then the city's got to go find another place to build 111 spaces for 11.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have questions? Does anybody have a motion to approve the bond resolution as presented? Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve the bond resolution as presented by Ms. Battle, seconded by Mr. Hardy. Mr. Dorsey wrote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is that an aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, let's see.
Chairman, I think that was the only
Is that it?
business we have.
Okay, does anybody else have any other business? Oh, I do have one thing I'd like to briefly talk about. You know, as everybody saw, again, we have new people that haven't done a deal yet. We do get a fee. I think I saw the development authority fee will be like $160,000. And that goes into our coffers to use as we deem fit for purposes that advance the purpose of this authority. We've done some things like, you know, concert sponsorships and that sort of thing, but and we've got some, does anybody know how much we have right now in our account? Anybody have a clue?
I believe it's about $150,000, Crystal.
Okay, and so then I'd like to task Chris with, you know, thinking of ways that, you know, we can use our funds, and I'd kind of like to do something more than just a sponsorship. I'd like to do something that actually, you know, that might lead to some project that betters the city. And whether that's some sort of event for developers, you know, development community, or whatever you think fits with what you're already doing. I'd like you to, you know, think about things that you might be able to come back with to really move the ball. Yes, ma'am.
I do have another question. So after assuming this proceeds forward, we have 111 additional parking spaces. Does anyone know, is there an estimate or an idea of if that will be enough, or if the city will need additional parking spaces for, you know, for all of the city events and things going on?
So,
They may not be able to answer that question.
Crystal, we've talked about more than the 111, so
Yeah, I think this will help replace the spaces that we are already using at the Citizen Center for overflow parking for our bigger events. We don't always have to use that. It's really only for large events or if we have multiple things going on here. Of course, for our massive events, 4th of July, you know, those huge events with thousands of people here, we don't have enough parking. But we're probably never going to be able to provide that amount of parking. So yes, at some point, will we probably need more spaces in the district? Yes, but at least this will replace.
But when we go to redevelop, if we go to redevelop parcels that we have 3 parcels, the heritage parcel, and then the 2 across the street from here, just right over there. We knew we needed parking, and this project being done was going to subtract from district parking that we would have had to find a way to replace it. So once those others get redeveloped, even if they just were to stay as usable green space, their proximity to that site with safe crossing over Sandy Spring Circle would be very helpful. I don't think anybody would argue that the trajectory for the parking needs will do nothing but increase over time.
Kristen, in your field, is there any discussion about what the world of parking looks like 10 years from now? As I'm starting every day seeing more and more Waymos going around, and I've even read, in the future, your own car will drop you off and you'll send it home to pick you back up when the show's over. I mean, it doesn't seem as futuristic as it did the first time I heard it.
No, it doesn't. It's technology changes so rapidly now. That it's hard to say where we'll be and when we'll be there, but I do think we're all anticipating that parking needs are going to change over time. But I don't think that's going to happen, lickety split.
Sure.
So we do think in the meantime, we still are we're going to have parking needs here for a long time. We have certainly made changes already, so we don't have minimum parking standards in the same way that we used to. Things in our development code have changed over time. So the parking needs, I think, are shifting, but maybe not as rapidly as we might have thought a few years ago.
And the good news is we're just adding to a parking deck that was being built. I mean, they were going to build this parking deck no matter what. ask them, can you add a floor? Which, you know, we tried to, because that's basically what they're doing. They're adding a level that worked out nicely to replace the parking that we had. So, you know, it's pretty efficient to just add to an existing parking. I appreciate the chair's suggestion about looking at the money. Councilwoman Millar has been talking also about a facade incentive program where we can work with one of the challenges we have in Sandy Springs is some older retail. And maybe the Development Authority would have a way to play a role as a sort of an impetus to get some of these property owners to improve the looks of their property. The vast majority of which would be paid for by those property owners themselves, but as potentially an incentive, other communities, I think Decatur and others have some facade improvement incentives, and that's an idea of something we can look at to help improve the aesthetics of our community. And I love the idea of using this money to spur redevelopment, whatever that may be.
And to build on that, we're working on our design guidelines standards now. So we have a mitigation of actively going on. So that will give us a basis to create some facade improvement program. That's actually a recommendation within our City Springs master plan. Councilwoman Lars brought it up as well. So this is something that staff will be looking at, and we have certainly thought about the Development Authority as a potential partner in that program. So we anticipate that's something that we'll be looking at early to mid 2026, bringing forward some recommendations at that point.
But it's a good idea not to just leave this money sitting in the bank. Let's put it to
Agree, and especially since we're gonna sort of refill the coffers.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, does anybody have anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Yes.
So currently, we are not getting any income that the church is allowing us to park or
We're
overflow.
paying them a small fee.
Oh, we are currently.
So we'll go from paying a fee
To earning.
earning
Okay.
cost.
What is that fee?
Small.
No,
That we're gonna receive or
no,
that
that we're currently.
it's very small. I mean, it's it's nominal.
It goes to the church.
Oh, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say just, and as our events continue to grow along the lines of parking, we want to do research on attendance. There's our two big signature events right now, 4th of July. Last year, we had over 10.5 thousand people here for the 4th of July, and our Sparkle Springs, which is our holiday kickoff event, I think 6,500 people for that. We're looking at some technology, perhaps to be able to track attendance around City Springs more accurately. And as we continue to grow the events we do and the attendance to those parking, just transportation in general will continue to become an important piece of getting our citizens in and out as efficiently and effectively as possible. Parking is one of the components that we've got to continue to work on.
Chris, can I add one thing? The infrastructure piece of this should not be understated. That 900,000 to $1 million. You know, we as a city want the folks that are going to this development, the people that live there in the apartments, the 340 apartments and townhomes, and the people that visit those restaurants to come here. I mean, they're going to be over there, so we want them to safely come across the street to our events and our restaurants that are here. So I mean, that's the whole goal of this district, is this interconnectivity. And I think that's when I saw that got added to this project, that was a really great, Dan, thank you, Chris. That was a really good add to this, to use this vehicle for us to be able to do some infrastructure improvements that would integrate the two properties. And we have so much going on around here. We have Kroger Center with lots of restaurants, the Brooklyn Cafe, then behind us where the Trader Joe's is. All these people are here. What's missing is a lot of the connection, the safe connections. So this is a really nice piece to create that. And there's going to be 600-700 people with them. And we want to get them over here to our restaurants and our events. So this would be great for that.
All right, well, with that, Ed and Joe, anything you guys want to say? You still there? We haven't forgot about you.
No, I'm here. That was a great presentation. I think it's a great idea for the city.
All right, well, guys, thank you for joining us. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Dorsey, second Battle, all in favor. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jim.
So these are my-
Appreciate it.
Thank you.